has been really what
Did you utilize any of the ICA knowledge or techniques in the work that you did with in Vancouver when you were living in that building?
Yeah, actually we did. I mean, I guess the whole building was kind of an idea of using community. How do you do community in a city? How do you make people feel like they're a part of a community in a city? I mean, cities you can be so anonymous in. You don't want to know your neighbor next door. You don't really get to know who's living. In fact, you might be even frightened about knowing who's there. And so when I had the building, we had a 36 apartment or 36 unit apartment building that I was doing the property management of, and while I was there having the opportunity to do that, I made it into a community building, and I did it by getting the building together, and I noticed that some of them liked to garden, you know, and they had pots in their balconies, and some of them would even sneak a tomato plant in the garden of the building, etc. And so what I did was I got those folks that were doing that together, and I said, listen, you know, if I pulled out all these shrubs and all this crap out here and turned these these planters and stuff that we have as a garden area into gardens, would you guys want a garden? And that's how we started. And we started just by gardening with each other. And then the gardening, we found out that there were people in the building that had other needs. And we had a lot of people in the building that were single parent families, you know, single moms. Some of them were on welfare, some of them weren't. And money was tough, and a lot of these parents never got away from their kids. And so we did group babysitting. We had them sort of, you know, on the afternoons of 4 days a week, all of the mothers, or 4 or 5 of the mothers that were in this group, you would take the kids this afternoon, and you would take them tomorrow, and you would take them the next day. And that would give some time off for moms to go and do some of the things that they needed to do, whether it was go to the doctor or get their hair done or just have a time out. And then it went into meals, actually, that they actually would do group meals together so that they would have their money go farther and that they were more nutritious and more nutritious conscious about really what they were cooking and how they were doing it. And some were better at it than others. Mm-hmm. And so it was a learning process for those that weren't so good at it. And also a lot of things about childcare were done because you know, some people were more clever about how to handle a child's problems than, you know, rather than yelling and screaming at them and being frustrated. You know, there was somebody else there that would sort of help mom through with that kind of a situation rather than having this frustration all the time. So the building over the period of time went through various phases of doing all of those kinds of things and more. I mean, we did homeschooling for kids in the building. And it was all because we started gardening together and started talking as a group, and we became a community within the community. And so that they could come into our building and it was our community. And in that community, we helped people find jobs. You know, if somebody knew of a job at work and we knew somebody down the hall that was looking for a job, everybody was down there. And the interesting thing for that is that the community itself started to grow and grow. And I seldom ever advertised for an apartment because everybody in the apartment sort of said, well, I know somebody wants to live here, right? And so they would come and we would move them in. Or we didn't have things like a lot of writing on the wall or a lot of graffiti or a lot of damage done to the building because it was their building. It became more associated with something that they belonged to and that they were a part of. And it was just a rental unit. In fact, it was almost a low area rental unit. I mean, it wasn't a high rental unit. It wasn't because we could get people in on welfare. And I didn't allow all of them to come in. They weren't, you know, it wasn't everybody on welfare. I wouldn't have allowed that sort of as a mixture, but we had people from all walks of life in there, and it was very, very fascinating. The homeschooling was absolutely fascinating. You know, to take kids and you know, the boy that I adopted, Tano. I mean, he just couldn't make it in school. He just wouldn't go to school, and he was in fights all the time. And when we took him into homeschooling, I had, you know, somebody down on 310 was going to teach him English, and somebody downstairs in 211 was the math teacher. And so, and I mean, and he just. and there was 4 or 5 of them did it. They went as groups, and it was amazing. These kids never missed a class, always did their homework, you know, and these teachers were smart enough to always praise them and give them good grades. They never failed them. They just were never allowed to fail them. And so these kids all went through school, right, because of that, and they wouldn't have. And so all that came out of the experience from ICA for me, you know, and it was an effort. I mean, I think as the manager, I was the catalyst for bringing that about. And if you could teach managers to do that, you could teach managers in apartment buildings, no matter where they were. I mean, you could bring about community development that way rather than any other way, I think. And it's a smaller group that works. That was my experience. We had people even dancing in the car park downstairs. We had a couple of people that were, the Filipinos were, they did some group dancing with the Filipino community. We had kids down there on a regular basis in the car park. We moved cars back so that these kids could do their dance practices in the car park. And we didn't have like a recreation room in the building at all. We had none of that kind of stuff. I mean, we had to use hallways, and you know, there wasn't an event that we didn't celebrate. I mean, Halloween, the whole, you know, group would come down. We had barbecues on a regular basis for the whole, and you know, we took over the patio areas, and we had contests for who grew the best and the biggest, you know, whatever, tomatoes, and you know, it was written up in the paper a number of times, etc.